Hello and welcome to Beyond the Bookshelf, where we sit down to discuss our favorite books on human performance and how to take the ideas discussed in these books and put them into your day to day life. Today, I am joined by some of the top notch leaders and master coaches, and also my personal favorites here at Clue Win. I've got Chad, Tanya, and Brian here with me today. Hello, everybody. And we are discussing Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Before we dive into all of the details, this was quite the interesting read, yeah?
Mhm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Thank
and we'll dive a little bit more into that yes and no later, won't we? So I was very much surprised with the opening of this book where he talked about relying on systems like your life depended on it. And it is very interesting how he built on his FBI experience and brought it into business experience. That feels like quite the large jump. But I would love to hear from all of you. Chad, maybe you can start us off with what surprised you most about Boss's approach compared to traditional negotiation advice.
Yeah. Well, I've heard about this book for years. It comes up pretty regularly in sales conversations. I had not read it myself until prepping for this. But there's kind of two things that stood out to me. It tracked with everything I'd heard about Chris and his approach. But one was, you know, I talk a lot about negotiation and persuasion in what we do here at To Win, and certainly in selling. Selling is a persuasive sport. And I wouldn't say that he was not talking about being persuasive, but it's not like the original intent. It's like understanding really what they're looking for, and asking questions to hear what they really are thinking, not to shape the point of view that you're trying to shape necessarily initially. And I think the thing that stood out to me more than anything, and probably through years of being married for over 20 years, is tactical empathy and the difference between. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it. Doesn't mean you have to feel the way that they do. Acknowledging the way somebody is feeling and the things that they're expressing as a way to open up a conversation kind of really stood out to me. And from a kind of somebody that seems like committed to system, kind of almost like a special forces kind of vibe that I get from him, like that stood out to me. That's like such an empathetic approach.
Brian, what do you think?
thank you for bringing this book to our attention. It absolutely has tactical empathy and mirrors what we do as a profession. It just does. And so when I was looking at this, there's so much that ties to discovery. There's so much ties to demo and those critical points of a sale. I had the good fortune of meeting Chris Voss
Hmm.
at
Mm.
one of our sales kickoffs at one of my companies I was at. He was our keynote speaker for our sales kickoff. And so he had a great big room, talked about it, and told some of the great stories from the book. And you wouldn't think that hostage negotiation is the same thing as a sales process, but it is. They're both high stakes, they're high emotion, they're limited trust, and that's every enterprise software deal. And so
Hmm.
I think for me, you were talking about persuasion, Chad. It's really about he uses negotiation as a way to gather information. It's not persuasion. Ties to discovery. That's the modern discovery of what we do. And I think it also ties into a lot of active listening. Like this is a master class in active listening. And at the end of the day, if we've done discovery right, we're going to be able to have a real collaborative conversation and demo ultimately to convert the deal because we've adapted some of these techniques.
Mm.
One of the things that I thought was interesting while we're just chiming in are the yes and no meanings. Yeah, Aaron, you alluded to it just a little bit ago, but we teach all over the world, and yeses and nos mean a bunch of different things. How quickly do they say it? How emphatically? When? And uh, what is the nonverbal cueing that's also going along with yeses and nos? And getting a no sometimes is better than yes. And all of those just really resonated with me, especially cross culturally. And as you're starting to relate with what somebody wants, what somebody needs versus what you're wanting to get out of a desired outcome for your conversations, yeses and nos were really impactful for me.
Yeah, certainly. And I know, Tanya, you said that this wasn't necessarily something that was surprising, but based on your history and your career, I know that tactical empathy is a big thing for you. So could you talk a little bit more about a time where you've tried tactical empathy? And why do you think Voss argues that understanding someone's perspective is more powerful than trying to be right?
Well, anybody who's been in my classes has heard my coaching. You can be technically correct and still be real, real wrong. So like, I
That's
I
so
I
good.
I love that you're right, and I'm still gonna say no. And where does right really get us? And so what I love about in my experience as client success and customer support, those situations for me were where tactical empathy and mirroring really came to shine, because if somebody is coming in hot, which people don't call support because they're having a great day, they just don't. They're coming in hot. You got to immediately relate, immediately start mirroring. Now that speaks to our empathy, our cognitive, our affective, and tactical applications of such, where we don't have to feel their same feelings, but we have to relate those feelings so that they feel understood, heard, seen, whatever words you want to use there, so that the temperature can come down. Then we can actually have a conversation, because when they're coming in like that, you're not even at a place where you can have a conversation yet. And every time we could employ those tactics, outcomes became so much better and quicker than if you just met them at the literal things they were saying, instead of understand what I mean, not what I said.
Hmm. Yeah. Uh, I love that. I'd build on that a little bit as well. Like in one of our courses, when we're talking about active listening, we're talking about tools that you could use, paraphrasing, clarifying, empathizing, and then validating would be the
Mm.
other. And so I think if we think about tactical empathy, it's like recognizing another person's perspective and like vocalizing that recognition, like help making sure they know that we see it, we understand what's going on. But I would say, even like particularly, Tanya, you're talking about when folks are particularly emotionally charged, there's maybe an objection, or in a post-sales situation, something going on, or maybe even a selling situation before the deal. Maybe they've had a bad experience before. They're nervous about making a decision, and so they're
Hmm.
actually fearful about what may happen. Going the extra step, instead of not only recognizing that, but validating, which might sound like, hey, I can appreciate that you've been through some situations that haven't worked out. I mean, if I was sitting in your chair, I may feel the same way. Right? Even going that far and like building that emotional bridge can be really helpful in just de-escalating. I think he calls it the amygdala hijack. We would call it the reptilian response,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And just kind of de-escalating that situation. So like, hey, I feel heard and understood. And I'm willing to open up with you now.
Hmm.
Just one thing to add to that, if I could, Aaron, real quick, because I know we have another question. I have a saying here: being right does not move revenue, alignment does. Tanya, guess what you're saying? And as a solutions consultant in the past, I often wanted to show my features and functions. I just wanted to show that capability. And we do that. And if I had a nickel for every customer that came to me or us and said, hey, I'm wanting to get out of feature, function, and sell outcome and values, now we've arrived, right? And when you try to prove capability first, you are gonna, instead of trying to show impact, that's where the problem occurs. And the growth in this class and this book and what's offering is saying, just really try to understand the impact and their perspective. Capabilities will come, but that's not what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. The best way that you can, connect with somebody is to set aside your own perspective so that you can understand where they're coming from. And if you're so focused on your own, you're probably not going to hear theirs. So I think that's a really good point that you've made there. Now, we talked about emotions. We've talked about how people may come into a conversation very spun up, or maybe they're stuck in fear. Voss talks about the technique of labeling emotions, and it seems simple, but it can kind of feel a little bit awkward, especially in a business transaction conversation, right? So, Brian, have you ever successfully used this in a conversation? What does that look like for you? Tell us more.
Yeah. So I'm going to call out Tim Need, who's a senior director of security and technical consulting at SAP Concur. He actually brought this to the leadership team and uses it religiously. But I didn't kind of know some of the labeling techniques that he does in every conversation. And I actually was listening to this audio book one Father's Day on my stand-up paddleboard in the pouring rain out in the middle of the Puget Sound. Labeling came on. So I very vividly remember going, that's what my friend and colleague Tim is doing. And it sounds like this. If you have something, Aaron, you're coming to me with, I might say, it sounds like you're concerned this rollout will burden your team. Like you're getting in front of it and you're labeling using terms like it sounds like. And he does that beautifully in the book and talks about that. And that's just going to immediately get you to feel heard, typically is what the person on the other side of the fence is going to feel. And then when it comes to the accusation audit, like I love this. If you do discovery and you know that they're just going to have an objection or there's something in the room that's just not quite sold, starting out the conversation and call it out and say, hey, I know you've been dealing with vendors that have under promised and under delivered. Maybe a C-suite's experiencing that or has with your product in the past. Get that accusation out in the front. It immediately takes the wind out of that contentious sale, and now they feel disarmed, and now they're like, oh, this person knows me and sees me. So labeling, it sounds like an accusation, just getting it right out in front, it's going to help you have a much better conversation past that.
I've always called it popping the bubble. Right?
Mhm.
Right.
Oh, brilliant.
So we all have that thing in the corner. Human nature is to want to get not pay attention to it or hide it or squish
Right.
it, but if you just pop the bubble and say, okay, so that there's a polka dotted elephant in the corner, we should probably just all talk about that. And now we're done, right? And we're good. Yeah.
The jumping gorilla behind all of it that we now are seeing.
Yeah. Well, I think, at least for me, I can speak for me. In my past, I've not wanted to bring that up because it's uncomfortable for me. But they know it anyway. Like, it's not like this is new information. You're just bringing it to the front so it can be processed together. It's going to come up, whether you want it to or not. It will come up at some point. And I love your concept of popping the balloon up front, Taunya. Let's go ahead and get it out. We're going to have to work through this at some point. Let's go ahead and do that.
And you get credit. You get credit for doing that.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And you think about like how to do this. I personally, I can come across a little stronger than I intend to. I don't know if it's the dark features or just my personality or what. So I personally am a little bit softer on like naming the emotion unless I really know somebody. But one of the techniques that I'll use, I'll offer for those that may listen to this, like, oh, I don't know that I would feel comfortable saying, wow, it seems like you're concerned about this, or it seems like you're frustrated about this. I'll sometimes say, I feel like there's some energy around this. Could you tell me more about that?
Great tactic.
Right. It's a little softer, but it gets to the same point. It may take a couple of more steps, but it gets there in the same point, particularly if I don't feel like I have the trust build or the relationship to get to that emotional level. Sometimes that works well for me.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point too, because you don't know if the person you're speaking to is ready to be on that level to talk about how they're feeling too. So you're kind of creating a dip your toe into the pool of let's talk about our feelings in this business conversation of, yeah, I'm going to touch it because I know it's there, but just giving them the space to decide what they feel comfortable with too. That trust, certainly. So let's talk about asking some questions and calibrated questions. So how and what questions change the dynamic of negotiation compared to a closed yes or no question? Chad, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of ways to think about this. Right? One of the techniques that Voss talks about is like how would you like to see that resolved? What would you want me to do about that? And that starts to give the other person, I think he says, like the illusion of control while helping to solve it for you. Um, I don't see that come up as much in earlier stage conversations, maybe in later stage sales negotiations. I see that start to come up. But those types of calibrated questions I see come up in like impacts and metrics when we're talking about if you're able to achieve this desired state, if you're able to solve this problem, if you're able to alleviate this pain that the organization is experiencing, how would that impact your peer group? How would that impact you personally? How would you measure that? What difference would it make? Those are open-ended questions that are meant to explore. And I think they solve the same challenge, right? What we're trying to do is understand what the other person's perspective is and how they're thinking about it, and ask questions and lead the conversation in a way that encourages them to open up and share with you what's really going on, so I can think about how I can help you solve this.
But it also opens up those ideas of, you think back and you remember conversations when you felt sold to, and the conversations where you felt collaborated with.
Mm.
And sometimes I have to buy a solution and they're selling it to me and I just have to buy it. Those are going to be my vendors. But if I feel collaborated with, now those are going to be my advisory and consultative partners in my organization. So if people are seeking out the hows and the whys and not just the what, check, 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 those tactics result in different relationship building subsequently, in my opinion.
Just to add to this one real quick. Yes, no questions. I've trained my organizations, like they just stop the conversation and they close doors immediately. And the how and what questions are perfect examples by Voss of how to do your open-ended questions. And we talk a lot about that. And so, how would this impact your quarterly targets might be a great how question, adding on Chad, the how and the what's. What would this mean? What would this need to, sorry, I have a note here. What would need to happen for this to feel low risk? And so when we're doing our current state, desired state impact, our measurements, those are great questions, maybe in the impact side to open them up. And I use this with a customer today, and it was just fun to see them kind of go. They were just they were seeing themselves, wow, what if we did achieve that? So it works. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say one other thing that, I don't know, to me, it feels like it's worth saying. Voss used these techniques so he can negotiate the best outcome for him. He's not doing this only to understand what's going on. It's very highly intentioned. I think about if I remember this correctly, it's like a kidnapping or a hostage situation where they wanted ransom, and it's like on Fridays or something. It's like they just want some
because
party
they
money.
wanted a party. Yeah.
Right. So you got like 90% reduction in the ask to like resolve this thing. He's getting the best outcome. So like these questions, yes, we do want to understand our clients. Yes, we do want to understand that. Yes, we do want to help them. Like there's a very strong intention around that. And we want this deal to move forward and progress. We want to close it. We want to get them to the outcome, and we want the strongest, most protective contract for us as well. Like there is strong intentions in that. It's not that I'm trying to understand what you want so I can help you get only what you want. It's very much a balance. So I don't want a listener to maybe hear a clip of this and be like, well, we're just trying to understand what they want. Yeah.
For a purpose.
For a reason.
For an outcome.
We're in this chair to
for
sell.
Business. Yes.
Yeah. So this very strongly intentioned. I always say in class, like there's a very fine line between persuasion and manipulation, and that is all your intent. Yes. I want what is best, what is good for you. I want good outcomes. And if I believe my solution based on me understanding this is helpful for you, the best thing I can do is help you get there as fast as possible. And the best thing for me is to get through this buying motion as fast as possible if my job is selling, as fast as reasonable, right? And so I think that's worth talking about when we're talking about empathy and all of that, it is for a purpose. And I don't think Voss shied away from that at all.
Saves lives when he wins. He
Yeah.
literally said
Mhm.
5. That's his goal.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's not an equal outcome for the hostage taker.
Right. Yeah. A little bit different for sellers. It's more
Yeah.
mutual.
Sure.
I'm not thinking anybody
Yes, a little more mutual. Get it. Yes.
slightly more mutual, but we'll pop that bubble to say there is a purpose behind this as well, right?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
certainly. We're not necessarily building best friends and long-term relationships here, but we do care.
Yeah.
It's both.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So Voss goes on to argue that getting to know early in negotiations actually creates safety and control. Chad, Tanya, I know that you guys have both expressed some excitement. I already alluded to my excitement for this part of the book earlier on in our segment, but I would love to hear more about if this matches your experience and also just what do you think about this? And of course, Brian, please chime in as well, but we'll start with Chad and Tanya.
Absolutely. I have grown to love no. I really have. Uh, it's actually counterintuitive to somebody who goes through a communications degree program or two. Uh, but when we come into sales conversations, support conversations, pre-sales conversations, especially in situations that I've been in where I don't know a lot about a client yet. I like to start with something that I'm generally uh, certain about, something like an industry insight that most people are experiencing. Because I don't know a lot about you, my conversation with you is a discovery conversation. I'm already recognizing that. But if I start out with an industry insight and you tell me no, like most people are experiencing this these days. How are you solving for that? And we're like, no, we're actually not having that problem at all. Like, great. What are you challenged with? And now we're off to the races because I gave you a point of view. Didn't matter to me really whether or not you agreed with it or didn't. It's the conversation starter. But so many people are my quote unquote allergic to no because no is bad and no means, oh, I should go away. But it's really just the start of the conversation, just like Voss says. Because a lot of people will say, yeah, yes. Anybody who's dealt with a teenager in their life is like, yeah. And then the trash still doesn't get taken out because they know they can't say no. So they say yes, but then never do it.
It's a conflict avoidance response.
Yes, exactly. So I love no. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah. This one really got me thinking because I would say that for the majority, excuse me, this one really got me thinking because I would say for the majority of my career, I've sought to prime the yes. Right? We've had this conversation. I'm looking for your support. Will you support me in this?
Most sales methodologies do train you that way,
Right.
as Voss says.
But he's talking about like no is safer as it gives control or autonomy to the other person.
Yeah.
So it's like, I even think about like when we do the time check in winning with executives. Hey, this call's scheduled for 15 minutes. Are you good to go to the top of the hour? That's a yes primed question. As opposed to, hey, this call's scheduled for 15 minutes. Is there any reason we'd need to end early? It's like, no, I'm good.
Mhm.
Right? It's
Different.
just as simple as that.
Same intention, but different nuance there.
Yeah,
Love
it
it.
gives you're more
Great
likely to
rephrase.
get the the real answer on that. It's like, hey, I'd really like to get your support on that. Will you support me in doing this? As opposed to, hey, we've talked about these outcomes. Is there any reason we shouldn't take this next step? Like, no, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do that. It's like I'm almost creating space for the hidden objection or the unspoken objection. I'd want to know that. And so I think there's something there around creating that space for somebody to say no, to give you what the objections are and phrase this question in a way that doesn't force a yes and potentially keep me from getting information that I'm going to need to know, but maybe opens up the opportunity for them to say some version of a no that gives me more information so I can work towards the yes.
hmm I use it in demos when people are highly engaged and asking a lot of questions, uh, especially in RFP or RFQ situations. All the RFs, all the scripted demos, where you say, "Hey, uh, does your software do this?" Uh, Yes. Do you need me to show you? Need is a different word than want. Everybody's going to say, "Yeah, I want you to show me." I asked the question. Yeah, I want the candy. Yeah, I want the cake. Give me the candy. Right? Instead of, "Do you need me to show you, or can you just tick a box and we can keep moving?" Right? It's different.
I was going to disrupt everything when you asked if we liked the book. I was going to say no, just test this theory out and see if it actually works on y'all. I said yes.
Uh,
I used to talk about with my teams, the best deals are the ones that you get to know quickest because they're not going to waste time in your pipeline. And so the power of no when you're managing a pipeline collectively or as a solutions consultant in pre-sales, whatever sales engineering we want to call ourselves, helping get to those no and getting those deals out of the way allows you to continue to drive that deal forward with a clean pipeline. And so bringing it up a level in how we manage our deals, those are awesome. Those are the best deals. They're out of the way and we get to that. Chad, one of the things I like to do is and you're alluding to this, is manufacture those key points of note early on, because that's going to give them a sense of control and an opportunity. And their defenses come down. They just open up. And now we're having a really honest collaboration about what are those objections you have? What's holding you back from making a decision today? So along that spirit of no.
Love it. Well, and I think the key takeaway for folks that may be watching this is if you find like objective observation, not judgment. If you found yourself in a situation where I'm curating a conversation where I don't have to hear no, is there something that you believe about your ability to handle a no that should be addressed? And would you better serve your client if you could deal with no's more effectively and work through what they're working through to get to a better outcome that would ultimately allow you to accelerate?
yeah. Little personal growth plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about personal growth for a second. If we could drill down to that, because I am a listener and participation person in this conversation who does not like to hear no. I struggle with that. So, what is something that I could do to help me be better prepared to handle no more?
I think that the main thing is no is usually not final. No is usually a response to a stimulus that happens in the moment, and to try to figure out what's behind that no, and see, okay, the no may be because I asked for something too big too soon. It may be because I tried to move in a direction I didn't have alignment with, and so that's more like a pump the brakes. If I think about it that way, as opposed to like a hard stop. Okay, usually that happens because I made a mistake a few minutes earlier. And I go back in the conversation, see where did I make an assumption? Where did I move too fast? Where did I miss something? Can I go back and clear that up? Take some time to rebuild that and then come back and ask again.
You haven't earned the yes yet. It's just a message. I would encourage people who struggle with no, uh, grew up Midwest nice. So,
Yeah.
who struggle with saying no, who struggle with hearing no. I've gotten over it.
Not from New York.
But
That's
hearing no differently, processing it in your head differently is a great place to start. When you hear no, what's going on? Like, can you identify, are you having a physical reaction to no? Is it messing with your self-confidence, your sense of understanding or value? If that's what's going on back here, then hear no differently. Try put in a new or a different filter there to Chad's effect so that we can then deal with no in a different way. So hear it differently first, and then we can act differently second.
Don't take it as a failure, take it as information.
hmm
Some fantastic advice that I'm going to take to heart for the rest of forever. So I come from a land where I'm pretty sure, created passive aggressiveness. So,
Mhm.
good old Minnesotans.
Mhm.
So definitely struggle with it now. But thanks for giving me that advice, and hopefully it's helpful to people who are listening to this conversation as well. So let's shift into maybe something a little bit, not that no isn't positive, because we're reframing that in our brains, right? But let's talk about the difference between that's right and you're right. So, Tanya, what would you say is the critical difference between getting someone to say that's right versus you're right?
Oh, this one was one of my favorite chapters. And because his uh his explanation of working on the hotline around the frequent flyers, the frequent callers on the hotline, where he just started telling them how it was, and he went, "Yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I should do that. Absolutely, you're right." Man, does that feel good. All of our ego is in it. All of our, oh, we're right, but oh, yes. I, if you're in any way tied into a place where being smart and being someone who knows things is important to you, that is going to feel real good. And most of us who demonstrate solutions are those kinds of people because we are the pros that come in and know the things. It's not just what we do, it's sometimes who we are. So when this chapter came up and it was, you're right, you're right, you're right, and the guy said, his mentor said, that was the worst call I've ever heard, screech, bang, right? What do you mean he agreed to everything? He's not going to do it. It's all yours. It's all you telling them. So when I talk about situations that I've been in business where it's been, help me understand, and this goes back to our what do you desire and what change would mean to you impacts, and how would you want success to look, all of those things. When they come to you with that information, there is nothing more motivating and nothing stronger than the conclusions that people come to themselves, and then you rephrase and they get to agree with it again and say, that's right. Because it's theirs. They own it, and then they're going to do it. So if I tell you, I don't have to own it. If you tell me, then you do. And it's just so powerful, such aha moments.
That's right, Tanya.
Thank you.
I couldn't help it. Sorry.
Perfect time.
Perfectly placed.
Yeah.
Mm.
It reminds me of a sales kickoff I was in earlier this year. And I was talking with the team about driving change. Like, ultimately, if somebody's going to implement your software, they're going to function differently. They will have to change the way they work in order to implement that. And don't underestimate the inertia around the way they currently do it. And even if it makes sense to them, it's like logically makes sense to them, that doesn't mean that they're going to go through the process of changing the way the organization functions to implement your solution.
Mm-hmm.
That's an emotional decision. It's not a logical decision. And I said, how many times have you been in a sales conversation and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense? As opposed to, you really understand what I'm trying to deal with. It's like, that feels different. Like, you get me is the emotional response we're looking for, not that makes sense. That
It
makes sense is
removes
the
those
nice.
barriers to action.
Yeah.
Like his football story about his son. Like, couldn't stop hitting the players. So, yeah, really interesting.
I think the you're right, or we often say, right? Kind of looking for that is dismissal and ends the debate. When you're going for that's right, you have to earn that when you're selling in executive situations. And it's that cognitive alignment, the mental alignment, that's what's going to help you win those deals. And it's such a simple switch. You're right to that's right. It just feels good because you are putting yourself and forcing yourself to align with your customer with true empathy so that you're both going to end up with alignment. When you have alignment, that's when you win the deal. There's distance between that. That's when you lose quick, you get to know fast, or it just falls off the rails. So you got to earn that alignment through using that's right, just a little switch. That's how you win deals.
Brian, you just said something I think is really important, and particularly in like corporate culture.
Mm.
I'm trying to make a point, right? How many times you've been in a call and somebody's doing that all the time, and they're right.
It's their
Right?
crutch.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm looking for buy-in. I'm looking for buy-in. And whether it's that one or it's others that are meant to get confirmation, like you're checking in to see if somebody's with you, I think is the intent. But that one in particular, I think you're susceptible for the counterfeit yes.
Uh-huh.
Right? I'm going to nod along with you because I don't want to address it because you believe you're right so much it's going to create a problem for me to disagree with you. You're not creating a space where it's comfortable to disagree with you. I think particularly as leaders who might cast a long shadow, that's a really damaging behavior that I think that leads to these false positives from the team that you end up getting friction later because you didn't identify it in the moment.
Because we had a little bit of a steamroller effect.
Unintentional, I'm sure.
Unintentional. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just reminded me when you brought that up, Brian, I was like, gosh, I'm trying to work that out of my vocabulary. Maybe not as effectively as I'd like to, but it doesn't create a space where you want to encourage dissent, disagreement, free thought. And depending on where you are in a cycle, I mean, there's times where you just need people to line up to it and do what you need them to do, right? There's certainly those times. But if you're in a place where you're trying to really craft the best solution and understand where are the risk points, do I have blind spots, using that kind of confirmation as opposed to encouraging a no or encouraging free thought could be particularly damaging.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And that goes into you can say one thing, but if your actions and these like micro things that you do don't align with that, people are going to see it really quickly and your team's going to see that really quickly, or the people you're selling to are going to see that quickly. You have to make sure that the way that you're acting and showing up matches what's coming out of your mouth. So that's a really good point and something definitely to think about in our day to day. So let's talk about ethical negotiation. We talked a little bit about how there's a very fine line between persuasion and manipulation. So, Brian, how can we utilize deadlines, fairness, and loss aversion ethically in our negotiations?
Couple things. FOMO comes to mind. Fear of missing out is one. That's kind of the loss aversion piece. But to me, it's I love this one because they have a problem. They're talking to you because you probably have a solution. And the quickest way we can both get me to help you solve that problem and provide the value and deliver outcomes is what we all want. And so getting it to what those constraints or those compelling events are, we call in sales, it just, to me, it feels right and it's good. And I need to do that. I need to uncover that. So in those situations, it's not a matter of just, oh, what if, here's where it's wrong. Say, I got to get I literally had a sales rep do this. If I close this deal tonight, then I'll get to go to President's Club. Not good. Instead, look, I hear that you've got you've got your sales kickoff coming up and there's a lot of work that we need to do ahead of time. Let's work backwards from there. What does the timeline look like? That's the compelling event. What needs to happen in order for us to both get you prepared and do you have a successful sales kickoff? If that's the use case we're talking about. So this one I love is just, they have a problem. You're here to solve it. And you need to get out what those constraints and compelling events are, and not through manipulation tactics, but clarifies, those consequences. If you don't do this, we might miss the sales kickoff. If you don't do this, the FOMO side of things is customers are growing at 20 to 30% a clip because they're using this framework, this methodology, this technique, our product. You've told me you want to improve that. Couple thoughts there.
I think there's a couple of things that I've noticed recently. One is I'm in the middle of a contract negotiation and was looking for some certain terms, and got all but one that I was looking for. Um, and so one of the things that we did trying to work through that is I'm trying to understand this other person's point of view, like why do they not want to do this, and I understood their point of view. And I also explained my point of view of why I need this. And so what we figured out is, okay, well, what if we take this aspect out of the project and then we don't have to worry about this? It's like, if we take this out, can I still have this? Like, yeah, you can still have that. Okay, that'll work. And we take something away in order to get that done. I think that's one thing that we could look at when we're like, what are the trade-offs here? I can take something off the table in order to give you the thing that you're looking for. Number one. And number two is, how many times have you wanted to take advantage of a sale that's like President's Day sale just came up, right? And you're one day too late and that 40% off coupon expired. I lost it. I'm gonna have to wait for the next one. But how many times have you been in a commercial selling situation? It's like, that quote expired, but I still expect my discount. And how many reps take it away? Not many. Not many. But if you create a situation where you communicate the takeaway ahead of time and you agree, like, hey, there's a reasonable path to close on this. We need to agree on that. But if it doesn't, this thing goes away. And to create that squeeze and mean it, it does drive like real action around that by taking away. I think the third point I'd make real quickly is, Kahneman writes in Thinking Fast and Slow that executives are as much as 80% more likely to make a decision to avoid a loss than they are to achieve a gain. And in our discovery questions, how often are we talking about positive impacts? These are the positive things we can change, as opposed to these are the negative things I can take away. That negative takeaway is uncomfortable for a lot of people when I watch discovery calls. But the research is very clear around pain avoidance being the better motivator here. And so just thinking about, as we're looking to negotiate contracts, to understand what people are looking for, don't forget about pain avoidance as a very persuasive motivator.
Well, as we get close to wrapping up our time, this has been a very illuminating conversation for me, and also somewhat of a therapy session. So thank you for the three of you joining me in this adventure today. So as we as we get into talking about the application and integration of some of these concepts that we've talked about, I would love to hear from all of you, just what is one thing that you would say is likely the hardest thing for you to either bring into your day to day, or something that you're not currently doing from Voss's perspective that would be really hard for you to implement or apply into your day to day work?
Tell you what I think is difficult, and that's the reframing, the creativity. We've discussed in other conversations that I build what's on the front of the box of Legos. I bought a fire truck, I build the fire truck, and then I put the fire truck into the box. I don't put things into a bucket and mix up all my Legos. That stresses me out. So if I have to get really creative without a structure or a process to get me there, I find that very challenging. So what I liked about this book are the very specific things to put into place. It's a lot like Atomic Habits when we were talking about those. But what is difficult for me is to, on the fly, think of, how do I rephrase that question from a forced yes into a curious no? How do I change my patterns of behavior to open up these conversations in different ways? So that's always a challenge for me.
Can certainly identify with that as well.
I'll go next. I think for me, in sales leadership, pre-sales leadership, working with customers, we often fill space pretty quickly. Silence is uncomfortable. And so just having that discipline to really pause in between the moment and let both sides digest. Another keynote speaker was a musician, and he was talking about on a piano playing music, and he said the real beauty in music is the silence between the notes. I still, that's a lot to process, but it gives us time to process and think and empathetically and authentically hear what the other side is doing. Again, getting that cognitive and mental alignment. So being comfortable with silence is something I'm working on. See what I did there, Taunya?
Saw that. Good job.
How about you, Chad?
Yeah, I think in commercial situations, I tend to I'm someone who has like an emotional amplitude of like this much, not this much, like this much,
He leaves
and
that
so
to me.
so I've learned to be more emphatic in the way I communicate and talk with my hands and smile and drive my inflection into my eyes and all of the things I've been receiving coaching on for a long time. And even like this conversation, like moving from sitting back in my chair to kind of moving up here, this tends to be the vibe that I'm in when I'm selling. I'm interacting with clients, like I'm like passionate, like future oriented, trying to drive this concept. And he talks about, was it the late night DJ? Is that the way he
Yeah,
talked
the late
about it?
night DJ voice.
Right. Just kind of bringing it down a little bit.
You're
Right.
talking
In
to me
counseling,
now.
they would call that like the gray rock. And not getting so emotionally involved or entangled if it gets tough. And I can get pretty reactive if I feel disrespected, if I feel like somebody's misrepresenting my character. I can get pretty hot about that. And so I think one of the things I've been working on, if I'm in a tight negotiation, is like, it's not personal. Just dial back the energy. I don't need to convince you of that. I can just let it play out, let you get a little bit spun up about it, and thinking about it more intentionally about me managing my emotions and letting yours spin up a little bit, that actually puts me in a better position because I'm the one that's calm now. And that to me still feels a little bit weird, but I know that it's effective.
It sure is.
So that's one thing I've been trying to be a little bit more mindful of, is when should I lead and steer and try to impact this, and when should I sit back and just let it go for a little bit, and I'll wait for my moment.
I think you bring up a really excellent point, though, that the only thing that you can truly control is how you are carrying yourself. And if you are taking the time to slow down and check in and manage yourself, that's also going to give you the opportunity to really analyze your environment and be able to see, is this a time for me to lead, or is this a time for me to sit back? So that's a fantastic way to wrap up our time here. This has been just a great conversation surrounding Never Split the Difference. And I think we can all agree that we're all still figuring things out. We're all still learning, growing in our abilities to work well with people, whether that is in a sales conversation or just together as a team like we are here. So, thank you all so much for your input and your perspective. It's very valuable, and I know it will be helpful to those watching today. So, hope you enjoyed this conversation. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn at 2Win, or any of us here on the panel today. We're all on LinkedIn and very active and would love to connect with you. So, thanks so much.